So let's talk about fume extractors and how they can be used in your shop. So there's different levels of fume extractors. There's different price ranges of fume extractors, and most of the time, the higher your cost for a fume extractor unit, the initial cost, and the filters, the more efficient it will be at completely removing all odors and all fumes before it gets exhausted out the back. So keep that in mind when you're looking at fume extractors, that there are different levels of fume extraction. This unit that we're going to be looking at here today is by Pure Air Fume Extraction. This unit was sent to me for demo purposes and to run it through its paces, and I've been using it for a few months now, and it does a fantastic job. Using this kind of mid-range, budget range fume extractor, when you're cutting really odorous material, mainly acrylic, leather, and some rubbers, you're still going to want to make sure that this gets vented outside. But the difference between just piping that stuff through an inline fan or an industrial blower fan and running it through this unit before it goes outside are night and day. So this unit, by the time anything, whether I'm cutting acrylic, whether I'm cutting leather, whether I'm cutting rubber, or anything that puts off a really strong odor, this thing is going to do an amazing job at filtering out any odor. And I mean, you know, you have to get right up to the vent outside to even know that there's some kind of smell coming out. This fume extractor will do that. But like I said, this unit costs 3 times as more as this unit right here. So now that I've given you kind of an idea of what, you know, that not all fume extractors are equivalent, and that there's different case uses for them, different ways that they can be applied and benefit you, let's go ahead and get into this unit right here and talk a little bit more about how it works. And then you can decide if that's something that you have an application where this unit could be really beneficial to you. And we'll talk about all those applications when we're done getting into the meat and potatoes of this unit when we're all finished. All right. So we're going to take a look at this unit by Pure Air Tech. Like I said, this unit was sent to me for evaluation, and so far it's been a really great mid-range unit, and it has completely eliminated any odors that I pump outside, no matter what I'm engraving or cutting, from offending either my family or my neighbors right next door. So I can feel confident using this unit that even if I'm cutting those materials that I talked about, you know, acrylic, leather, rubber, stamp rubber, you know, some of the worst stuff. When my laser pumps all of its fumes and smoke through this, and then I vent this outside, there is practically no odor. And that is why I find such a benefit to this unit. So this is the PA-800FS from Pure Air Tech, and this is a mid-range budget, you know, fume extractor. And I thought it would be cool if we kind of opened it up and I let you take a look at it and kind of explain what's going on there. And it's pretty cool. I'm always kind of fascinated by these things. So inside of here, we've got a series of filters. We've got a little, you know, kind of filter for catching any heavy debris. So if any heavy debris came out the back of your laser for any reason, it would stop it from, you know, going through. So we've got like this pad here. Then we've got the initial multi-stage filter right here, and it comes with this little Allen key. And you're gonna, let's go ahead and take a look at that. So you can see this is a deep pleat filter, equivalent to a HEPA filter, and it's got multiple stages in it. And I'm not going to actually open it up, but this filter does a great job at removing the actual, the actual particles that are in the smoke, or whatever that it is that you're engraving or cutting, are going to get caught in here. Not necessarily the smell, which is created by the VOCs. That's actually going to happen in the final layer before it gets exhausted out the top. So It's really easy to take out and re-put in these filters. You just slide them in, and then you use your Allen key to lock it in place. And the reason that you need to lock it in place is because there is a gasket up here, and that filter smashes up into that gasket, so it's nice and airtight all the way before it gets ejected out the top. And then this final stage right here is the activated carbon charcoal filter, and it is heavy. It is really heavy. Most all these fume extractor systems are going to have a final stage filled with some kind of activated charcoal. Some companies are going to use more exotic activated charcoal, and other ones are going to use just basic activated charcoal, which actually does a really good job. So this filter is about 35 pounds, and that's because it is filled to the top with activated charcoal, and I'll throw a picture up of what that looks like. I've got some in my hand there, and so you can see what it looks like. So all the vapors and the fumes go through the first stage filter, then finally they go through this pile of activated charcoal carbon, and that is what's actually going to get rid of the odors, the VOCs, all that stuff that's offensive, that can stink up your shop, that's bad for you to inhale. This is the part that's going to take care of that. So it goes through that final stage. We'll go ahead and lock that back in. And then it comes out the output, which then you connect another hose to and run that outside. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other side, and I'll show you what the back looks like. All right, so here we are on the back side. So I had to do a little adapting coming from my epilogue, because most laser engravers, most CO2 laser engraving machines are going to have probably like a 4 or 5 inch exhaust, and this unit actually came with a 6-inch input. But the company has let me know that once you order from them, you can actually request any size input you want. If you want it to be 4-inch or 5-inch or 6-inch, they'll go ahead and make you one at no additional charge. So I did some adapting. So this is coming right here. This is coming from my epilogue, and it is going into the unit. And like I said, it's going from the bottom when the fumes come in all the way through those filters, and then finally it's coming out this end, and this is my exhaust hose that I have coming, and that is going to my vent, which goes outside. We've just basically got it runs on standard 120 power. It does have the ability to hook up a remote to it, which is pretty cool. So if you want to have it in line to anytime you turn on your laser, it automatically kicks on. That's pretty cool. That's a nice little feature. And then that's it for the back side. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look at the control panel at the top, because that's pretty cool as well. All right, so here's the control panel. It's a pretty basic unit, but what's really nice about this, and this will help you extend the life of your filters, which we'll get to here in a few minutes about replacement costs and filters and when to replace them and stuff like that, is you go ahead and turn on the unit, and you can hear that's about mid-power right there. Just go ahead and listen to that for a second. It's really not that bad. This unit is very, very quiet. And I actually have one of the hoses off the back right now, so that's actually with one of the hoses off. So I don't know if you can see the display here. Let's see if I can get into that. No, you can't really see the display. Well, that sucks, doesn't it? Yeah, you can't really see the display. Anyway, if you could see the display, which you can't, it's got the RPMs that the motor is running, and it has basically plus or minus speed control. So you can just use it very minimally. I don't know if you can hear that. Or you can crank it all the way up to maximum, which is really impressive. And I'm gonna list all the specs of this machine in the description of this video, and also a link to where you can go and get even deeper into the specs of this unit, because it is really impressive. So this is about halfway. You can listen to the sound. We can go full tilt boogie. And that's like maximum, the highest it'll go. And that is actually way more than I need in my Epilog Fusion Edge. But man, when I'm cutting and engraving and I've got this much exhaust going, it is so good at extracting those fumes away from my laser head. And the vacuum table works like a dream. I could even use this unit in my larger Epilog M2 Fusion and it would do just fine. So let's talk about when you would need a fume extractor and when you could just be fine with some of the other exhaust fans that we talked about. So I think that this kind of fume extractor from Pure Air Tech has its place when you work in a confined area, or you're trying to have your laser engraving business or laser cutting business in an area where you are in close proximity to your neighbors, or a situation with, if you were in a condo, if you were in a school type setting where you had some CO2 lasers set up, some projects in a makerspace for the students, and you couldn't just exhaust out the window because it's blowing into the classroom right next door. This would be where this unit would come in extremely handy. If you're going to be a full service shop and those are some of the materials that you're going to be cutting, then you're definitely going to want to find a way to filter out the odors. Now let's go ahead and talk about the consumables, because fume extractors do have a consumable, and that is the filters. So periodically, you're going to have to replace the filters. There's usually 2 filters on these type of laser engraving fume extractors that you're gonna have to replace. That's the HEPA type filter, the deep pleat filter, and then of course, the activated charcoal filter, which I showed you on the top. And the cost to replace them is just going to be a cost of doing business if this is a type of unit that you need in the type of business that you have. And you can just put that money aside knowing that every 6 to 9 months to a year, you're gonna have to replace both of those filters. And usually these machines will let you know when it's time to replace it, because they'll sense that the airflow is being restricted and let you know that it's time to replace the filters. You'll notice that the machines will start to get a little bit louder. They'll sound like they're starting to work a little bit harder. And you'll start to notice that maybe if you walk outside, or if you have one where you're venting inside, that you're starting to get faint sense of odors finally coming through, because the filters are all used up and they're full of all those particles. I haven't used this one long enough to have to replace the filters on it, but they're very affordable.